Cali X Boxing here. Welcome back to the show. And this is like I got some stuff going on later, so I had to do the show earlier because I have some stuff later that I have to get to. So doing this show at 10:20 Central Time, so it's a new time. So we'll see what we pull in as far as numbers and all the people who are going to watch this in the archive. Make sure you leave your comment below. Just getting to some of the people who were commenting archive yesterday. So appreciate everybody who's been supporting the channel, hitting that like button. And once again, if you do one thing today, hit that like button and leave a comment below. Make sure you say who you are coming through and hit that like button. Salute to Anthony Sanchez, Andre Rodriguez in here. Good afternoon to you, bro. 1620 here. Great time for a live stream for me. And that's military time, 420. 420. Military time for you. Shout out my guy, Edwin Castillo. Shout out to you. I'm not titling this video a certain way to add shock value or anything like that. This is what I truly believe. And I believe this for a reason. And those of you who have been friends of the show for a while know that I make no bones for a while now about how I feel about premier boxing champions and how they've been a net negative for the sport. And I would even go further than that. I think they've become a cancer for the sport. I think when we look at the American boxing landscape and we see no real viable stars as far as American boxers, I think when we look at the belt count and we see Japan catching up to America as far as champions in boxing and Mexico getting closer, I think much of the defection of American boxing fans, the exodus, them leaving the building, when a Leonard Ellerbe says we have the numbers and we know that only 200,000 people in America are diehard boxing fans, I think he needs to be looking in the mirror. And I think there are big culprits to that. There are guys who I feel, and there's blame to be passed around everywhere. But I think much of the blame should be laid at the feet of certain individuals, and one individual in particular. And I feel like the boxing media is so afraid to do it that we're not able to process information that is coming out and lay the blame where it belongs. Where it belongs. It's a constant deflection. It's a constant game that they play to where when certain news cycles come about, and it's like a wave, right? And it's hard to process this stuff, but it's a deflection, and they want you to point the finger elsewhere instead of pointing the finger where the finger should be pointed. And this yesterday and today is a key example of it. And the PBC state-run media is out there, and they're pushing press releases, basically, and passing them off as news. And that's what they're famous for at this point. You have certain individuals who do this for certain companies, but as we've stated, I've heard Beeb state this as well, and I'm going to play a clip from Beeb in a minute to start off the show. Friend of the show. But as he's pointed out, as I pointed out for years now, it's when I say something negative about Top Rank and Bob, I don't get any pushback. And when I say something negative about Trust Fund Eddie, I don't get pushback. And bad about the Zone, I don't get the pushback. When I say something bad about Turkey El Sheikh, critical of him and the Saudi and questioning if there's sustainability there, I don't get this pushback. But when I go after PBC, and it's always framed the same way, it's always framed as you're a PBC hater, when in actuality, it's the opposite. Those guys have the knee pads on, and they're constantly guarding the fort. And you can't lay the blame where it belongs because they're going to get in the way of it. They want you to point the finger over there. This guy's ducking that guy. That guy's ducking this guy. And I'm going to get into it. I'm going to lay it all out there. I'm going to show you. I'm going to put on the screen the reporting that's out there this morning. And I'm going to put on the screen how certain individuals who want to see what they want to see will highlight something that is not the pull quote. It's not the pull quote. And people are not talking about what needs to be talked about. There's a huge macro issue here, and it's much bigger than Canelo versus Benavidez. Is Canelo ducking Benavidez? We'll have plenty of time to get into that. We'll have plenty of time to get into if Canelo versus Berlanga is acceptable, which I've already told you. For me, it's not, unless it's sandwiched in between two fights, like an Abney Yildirim type of thing. We'll have plenty of time to get into that, but that's what they want you talking about right now. It's what I told you yesterday. The guys, just watch how people react to it. And it even happens to smart people with good podcasts, entertaining podcasts. If the first thing they're saying when this news is dropped yesterday is Canelo is ducking Benavidez, they're lost. They're lost. They're either lost or a lot of them are just biased, right? But there's a much bigger issue at hand, fellas. Much, much, much bigger issue at hand that has been ignored for years. It's been ignored. It's been passed off and passed off and passed off. And those of us actually talking about it, who've been talking about it for years, are being demonized. And it's right in front of everybody's face. It's being done right in front of everybody's face. And when the day that it looks like the beginning of the reckoning is supposed to, it may be happening, that the chickens are coming home to roost, that the very thing that these dudes have been carrying out for 9+ years, because this was going on before the PBC, when we talk about guys like Mayweather, Ellerby, Al Heyman as a manager. Now all of a sudden I'm supposed to ignore that. Now all of a sudden I'm supposed to deal with this differently. Now all of a sudden I'm supposed to forget the business side of things. Now all of a sudden I'm supposed to forget that Mayweather was out there saying, we don't make other promoters rich. We don't make them rich. We're not in the business of making other promoters rich. We're not in the business of, we want to keep everything in-house. We want to do everything in-house. We're supposed to ignore that, right? We're supposed to ignore that Fight Hype is out there telling us Tank Davis doesn't field offers. Tank Davis gives offers. And you take the offer. When it comes to Canelo, that's not the case. So I talk about all that, but they want you dealing with this a certain way because they want to deflect. They do not want you pointing the finger at where it belongs. They don't want you pointing the finger at Al Heyman. And I feel bad. I feel empathetic for a lot of these boxing writers because this is their job, right? And I am empathetic to that. I am empathetic to, they have to feed their families. It's a tough market. It's a tough economy. They need to do things, right? But man, for the love of God, and people who would know me, people who do know me in the chat, because some of you have come to know me personally, know that I've had to stop short of doing certain things because I don't feel it's right ethically, right? And this is outside of the boxing world. But there's just no way, man. There's no way I could have yesterday, if I'm a boxing writer, put out an article or a statement yesterday saying that Canelo and the PBC mutually agreed to part ways. There's just, this is tough stuff to swallow, fellas. Mutually agreed to part ways. Who in the hell mutually agrees to part ways with Canelo Alvarez? If you have two brain cells to rub together, you would not believe that statement. Earl Stevens and PBC is ghetto as good Lord. Thank you for the super chat, Earl Stevens. Let me play this just to get this off and popping. This is our guy, friend of the show, Joe Habib, ringside reporter, very intelligent dude. He's on his show last weekend. I was actually tuned into this, and he's talking about, let me just play the clip for you, and we'll break it down. 2-minute, 18-second clip. He brings up some great points.
So when Mayweather said, okay, we don't want to make another promoter rich, they care more about the company than they do the fighters. Like there's situations where both the fighter and the promotional company can win. To me, when you hear a promoter say we don't want to make another promotional company rich, that's the wrong thing to say. Your job is to make your fighter rich alongside your company. Floyd First thing he does when he gets up on the podium at a Mayweather Promotions event, talks about himself. He could give two fucks about the future of the sport, the future of boxing. You know, all these things that you hear are a byproduct. All the problems right now that you have in boxing with this A side, B side. We never used to hear A side, B side when Marvin Hagler was fighting Tommy Hearns, or when he was fighting Sugar Ray Leonard, or when Muhammad Ali fought Joe Frazier. We never heard these things before. When Felix Trinidad fought Oscar De La Hoya, we never heard A side, B side. We never heard, oh, the fight has to be on Showtime. The fight has to be on. These are all Mayweather constructs that people have created over the years and fed into, and they continue to feed into.
Preach.
I mean,
This guy has destroyed the sport.
Preach.
Imagine if Raleigh were to beat Ryan Garcia.
Preach.
What would happen to Raleigh?
Preach.
You don't think that would increase his profile? So then when you come back to PBC, then you're a bigger name, you're a bigger star. And then that in turn, if you're playing the long game, that helps the promotional company. Sort of like what Eddie Hearn did with Devin Haney, right? He's like, okay, go over there. Go over the top rank. Become undisputed champion. And then when you come back to me, what happens? You're a bigger name. You're a bigger star. PBC don't do business that way. They don't look at things like that. Everything is about egos. Oh, we're personal feelings and stuff like that. Well, we're not going to do business with that guy because we don't like him. That's not how Eddie Hearn works. That's not how Frank Warren works. And that's not how Bob Arum ever worked. Bob Arum would do a deal with the devil if he knew the deal was right.
Yeah.
That's just not how they do business over there. So if you want.
Beautiful stuff from Beeb. Beautiful stuff from Beeb right there. It actually gives me goosebumps to hear it. That's amazing. That was an amazing 2-minute and 18-second clip. It's things we've been saying for a while. And look, Mayweather, the sad part about how Mayweather is guiding his fighters is he's guiding him against the way of how he dealt with things early on in his career, right? Mayweather got it through the mud. Mayweather, 2 years into his career, we talked about that, right? We talked about the year he had in 1998 and the things he did. And then once he fights De La Hoya, I think that's, what is that, 11 years into his career, he fights De La Hoya, then he starts to turn the table on people. So you got to at least give him credit for that. But a lot of times, the face of boxing, the image of boxing is built in that guy's image, right? Mayweather was the face of it. Mayweather, it was built in his image. And then Canelo comes along after that and says, no, we're just going to fight the fights here. Canelo does it to where he fights Trout, he fights Mayweather, he fights Lara, he fights Golovkin 3 times, he fights Danny Jacobs. And people can get into the weeds about when these fights happen. And we're going to get into that with Benavidez as time goes on, right? I don't want to get off topic here. But what he's saying is Mayweather and these constructs that he came up with and he developed, A side, B side, these are all terrible, terrible phrases and terrible things for the sport. Marination. Mayweather became the king of marination. It should be inexcusable to boxing fans that all of a sudden Manny Pacquiao becomes a threat. And what do we start hearing? We hear this dude turn into Nancy Reagan. For 5 years, it's USADA versus VADA. And we're all just sitting here as boxing fans, and none of us know anything about USADA, VADA, and we don't want to. We just want to see you fight. And especially when we know you don't care about this issue, because if you did, your fighters in your own gym would not be popping dirty. And on top of that, you wouldn't have this cozy relationship with USADA. Wink, wink. And then they do it again with Spence versus Crawford, and you have the Haymanites, right? The ones that get in the way when I point on days like this at Al Heyman, and they're going to come after me again. Racist, Hitler, all kind of stuff, right? When I get on here and I point the finger in the correct direction, they're going to try to force a misdirection. They're going to try to throw heat at me and get in the way of their false god, their deity, Al Heyman, who continues to let boxing down and continues to let his fighters down. Beeb brings up a great point, and it's one we've been bringing up here, and it's the one that the boxing writers continue to fail to confront. Ignore. They don't want to confront this. I saw some guys on the front end of this, Thomas Hausers of the world, try to confront this, and they were called racist, all kind of stuff. They were silenced, right? But it's an obvious question. How is he advising Rolly Romero? And Rolly is not sharp enough to figure this out. We've come to that conclusion. Poor Rolly, he was a special ed kid. Let's just call it what it is. He's not intelligent enough to figure this out, and he's being used, and he's being abused. And he was given the Tank fight, right? So I guess in that case, he can't complain, right? But he's being used here for platform protection, and he doesn't know it. Poor Rolly is out there thinking he's going to fight in front of 200 million spectators at home because Amazon Prime has 200 million subscribers or whatever he's been told. But this dude was talked out of fighting Ryan Garcia. Ryan Garcia, if there's a fighter you want to fight, it's him. Dudes would cut off their left nut to fight Ryan Garcia. It would actually help him make weight easier, right? But they would cut off their left nut to fight Ryan Garcia. Why? He's an easy fight for a ton of money. He's a crossover star, so in fighting him, you become possibly a crossover style. And if you mess around and win that fight, good Lord. Good Lord. The sky is the limit. But one thing is they don't trust him to go over there and win that fight. That's number one. But number two, and more importantly, they're advising this dude to against taking a fight that can change his career, change his life, win or lose. And they're advising him to go over here and fight Isaac Cruz, all 4'11" of them, walking around like he's a real life pit bull with a collar around his neck, right? On the undercard of a pay-per-view that nobody's going to watch. How did they get away with that? We've talked about how from the beginning how the PBC from its root, from its core, cannot work. It cannot work. Why? Because you have a promoter who is getting people to believe that he's not a promoter, and a manager who's getting people to believe he's not a manager because he can't do both at the same time. So he's going to call himself an advisor so he can do both at the same time. And he's got a shadow promoter out there. He once upon a time had several shadow promoters. Now he has one. And on top of that, he's got a hateable, just looking at the dude's face, just a hateable human being who's just, God, the most condescending person on planet Earth out there working as his press secretary when he's a network exec in Steven Espinoza. It can't work. It cannot work. And people are not asking the question, how do you get away with doing both at the same time? How do you get away with using Rolly Romero as a tool for platform protection? How do you get away with being his advisor and advising him against something that's clearly better for his career? Clearly better for his career. Let's just get to the meat of what's on the table here. This is the reporting, and I told you, man, these reports, and you got to be prepared for it. They're going to come out, and you got to be able to dissect them, and you got to be able to read it. And at this point in time, I think if you guys are here in the chat, you have some people who are here just because they hate watch, right? But for the most part, I think if you're here, you're educated on boxing, and you should be able to read the stitches on the fastball and have a foundation, right? You have to have a foundation, and you should be able to know who not to trust and who not to listen to and who, where to go depending on who the messengers are. So at this point, I know not to believe Samson with the 27 chains. I know not to believe anything coming from the PBC, right? And what you're seeing this morning and yesterday is a lot of PBC press releases dressed up as news articles, right? So what we have here is, this is from Dan Raphael's Substack, and a lot of this that I'm about to read is just throwaway stuff, right? And we'll get to the meat of it in a minute, because the pull code is generally buried in the back. And that's generally the case when something's trying to be hidden from you. But somebody sent me this because I don't subscribe to the Substack, so I couldn't see this in the actual article because this is the back part of the article. At issue with was the inability of Alvarez and Heyman to agree on an opponent and the guaranteed purse for May, yada, yada, yada. According to the source involved in the situation, Alvarez agreement, blah, blah, blah. But when it came to finalize the May fight, it was going to be against WBC titleist Jamal Charlo. Heyman wanted a discounted dollar specified for Alvarez in the contract. Once one source said Heyman was also would have been okay with Munguia. They don't need Heyman for Munguia. Felt Charlo in particular would be a hard sell on pay-per-view, obviously because of the inactivity, how pedestrian he looked in the win, yada, yada, yada. So let's get to the actual meat of this. And I want you to pay attention to what's highlighted because this is being sent out and it's being highlighted by, this isn't highlighted by Dan Raphael, I don't believe anyway. It's being highlighted because it just shows you people see what they want to see. It's confirmation bias, right? A source said that Heyman would have given Alvarez the guarantee and the agreement to fight Charlo if he also agreed to a September fight with David Benavidez. And this is when I started to question things, right? All right, wait. They're not willing to pay for the Mal Charlo fight, then what have I been saying here for a while? And this is when, once again, I got to be transparent, and I was wrong about it. And I was told that I was wrong about it last year by a boxing manager, and I didn't believe it. I just could not. Once again, I'm giving PBC too much credit. I gave PBC too much credit when D-Styles telling me Tim Tszyu is about to fight Keith Thurman. And I'm like, all right, so what's the main event? And he's like, you don't understand. That's the main event. I'm like, there's no way. There is no way that that's the main event of the inaugural Amazon card. There's no way. And it is. I'm giving PBC too much credit. And when I'm thinking that Benavidez is in this contract and he's the third fight on the deal, I'm giving, once again, PBC too much credit because there's just no way, right? There's no way. But the pull quote is not highlighted here. This poor person, this poor individual highlighted something that is not the pull quote. The unbeaten WBC interim super middleweight titleist and one of his mandatory challengers, who many believe would be his toughest test in the huge fight commercially. Benavidez promoter Samson Loco Waka 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 told Fight Freaks Unite last week that the offer made for Canelo Alvarez was $55 million cap. Other sources said the same, but Alvarez met. So you just throw that away, right? That's he said, she said, and once again, you have to believe track record. And you should have a foundation to where when you see Samson say something, you just discount it. You do not make yourself look bad and chase clickbait and do 5-hour lives about Samson saying he offered somebody $55 million. It's cap. We just say it's cap. Complicating the prospect, and this is the important part, complicating the prospect of a September fight. Complicating the prospect of a September fight. And this is where we need to start pointing the finger where it belongs. Where it belongs. If your initial reaction to all of this is this guy's ducking that guy and that guy's ducking this guy and this guy, you're lost. You're lost, and I'm losing patience. I'm losing patience with dudes who continue to react like a cat reacting to the laser pointer on the wall, and boxing writers not doing their jobs. And I'm not pointing out some specifically. All I'm saying as a whole, collectively, you dudes are not paying attention and starting conversations that are actually meaningful conversations. I don't have enough power here. I'm just a boxing fan, a concerned boxing fan, a concerned citizen in the boxing space, dedicating 3 to 4 hours per week. That's all I have time for, to try to start conversations. And I do it in passing on Twitter. I don't have the power here. We don't have the power here, unfortunately, to affect change. The boxing voices of the world need to be doing this. The Showbiz Pizza's adult guy of the world, the guys who have huge platforms need to be doing this. They need to be locked in on what's really important here. The macro issue that's really important, instead of clickbaiting and saying, is Canelo ducking Benavidez? Benavidez ducking Morrell Jr.? Focus. Boxing writers, for the love of God, sack up. Sack up and do something meaningful for the boxing public. I'm just a concerned citizen here trying to start the conversation. That's all I'm trying to do. Complicating the prospect of a September fight with Benavidez was that, according to one of the sources, he was surprisingly, and I'm as shocked as everybody else, surprisingly, yeah, you should have put that in all caps. Surprisingly, not one of the opponents specified in Alvarez's 3-fight PBC agreement. Alvarez, according to a source, was not interested in amending his money for May 4 and facing an opponent not part of the original agreement. Good Lord. Good night. Good Lord. And surprisingly, since we're using that word, I just, you continue as a boxing fan to get let down. You're let down by the boxing media. You're let down by the power brokers, but that goes without saying. But their feet are never held to the fire, because we should be having conversations right now that are important conversations and can bring things to light and can actually affect change in boxing. But instead, these dudes are feeding you stuff as constant misdirection. It's like the federal government, right? What do? They don't want you pointing at them. They want to play this game with you, and they want to pit the pitchfork guys against the tiki torch guys and pit them against each other. That way you're constantly distracted. And while you're distracted, they're carrying on their business. That is not good for you. You dudes are out here doing lives about is Canelo ducking Benavidez ducking Morrell Jr. And I'm telling you, you're going to have plenty of time to do that, fellas. You're going to have plenty of time. We're going to have months ahead where you can do that. It's not looking like Canelo versus Benavidez is happening anytime soon, right? So you're going to have plenty of time to put those things out and put your clickbait out and yell at guys you don't like online. Plenty of time. You need to focus right now. You dudes need to focus, and I hope this gets out to dudes who can effectively, dudes who have the power and dudes who have a bigger base and who have the time to do this because they're full-time dudes in the space, to actually affect change and actually talk about things that need to be talked about for us, the boxing fan. It shouldn't be up to boxing fans to get on here and set up channels and try to start conversations that need to happen, because these dudes won't do it. You're the one getting paid to do it. Do it. For the love of God, can somebody with power in the boxing space actually have real conversations out there? These past 2 days, this past 24 hours proves it. It shows it to you, what we've been talking about for years. These dudes, man, they're either corrupted or they're just incapable of doing it. A lot of dudes, let's be honest, in the boxing space, from power brokers on down to dudes in the media, they just can't have success in other spaces. They're not capable of it, right? So they come to boxing is sort of like this gravitational force of incompetence and corruption. It's that gravitational force, right? And the boxing media is no different. They'd rather be talking about other things. They'd rather be doing stuff about politics. They're just not capable of doing it. So they come to boxing. And then they resort to either clickbait or they're just not capable of doing it. But this is the pull quote right here, not what this dude highlighted. The pull quote is right here. Complicating the prospect of a September fight with Benavidez was that, according to one of the sources, he was surprisingly not one of the opponents specified in Alvarez's 3-fight PBC agreement. That right there is an indictment on the PBC. And look, we'll have plenty of time to talk about this. We've talked about how Canelo has built up this organic fan base, right? And I got bad news for the Canelo haters. It's not going to be as easy as Canelo fights Berlanga and his fan base goes away, because he's built up a lot of forgiveness, right? But he's complicit in this too at some point, some percentage. I talked about this when he signed the agreement with the PBC. I like it because he'll beat up on some easy PBC fighters like the Charlos, right? That people have been trying to build up as these boogeymen, right? But you concern yourself with, if he goes over there, does he take on the image of a PBC fighter? And that's not what we want. Do we get over marination? And our fears here are being carried out. To a certain degree, to a certain percentage, they're right. He is complicit in this to a certain degree, but this is the bigger issue, is the PBC. How do they continue to get away with this with immunity? And this pretty much sums it up. Michael Benson, Al Haymon's PBC were reportedly willing to pay Canelo Alvarez's guaranteed purse for the Jamal Charlo fight in May. And this is what Michael Benson does, by the way. Michael Benson with two N's. While we're talking about incompetence of the media, he'll copy and paste an article, and he'll put who wrote the article, but he won't put the link of the article. But only if he agreed to fight David Benavidez in September. Is claimed that Canelo's 3-fight deal with PBC initially set out guaranteed purses for various potential opponents, but Benavidez was never one of these, and Canelo did not want to agree to a reduced purse, because why would he? You promised him a certain thing. And people are shocked at how easily, everybody else has to go into litigation, how easily Canelo got out of this 3-fight deal. It's because it's ironclad. It's right there in writing. He was promised things that were not delivered to him and were not going to be delivered. PBC is saying we're not going to deliver because things have changed. Things have changed. Why? Showtime has walked out the building. We don't have guarantees to give people anymore for fights that don't have quality control. Now, all of a sudden, they have to worry about quality control, and they have to worry about it with Canelo. Why? Because Canelo comes with a huge overhead. And the guys in the PBC who are fighting, this isn't a Tank Davis situation. This is how you know Tank Davis, for the stupid boxing writers out there who are saying Tank Davis is the face of boxing, you know how they're wrong, is for Tank Davis, they don't have to worry about this. Why? Because the overhead is much smaller. They just put a cheap B-side like Frank Martin on the card, and they're going to make a margin. With Canelo, the overhead, this is big boy money we're talking about. This isn't Tank Davis money. This is big boy money that they have to come out of pocket with. And the problem is, look at what has developed. They've lost Showtime. Errol Spence is no longer in the mix for a Canelo fight like he was the original deal, 164. Errol Spence, one of the 3 fights, because he got beat from pillar to post. So now they cannot execute this plan without losing money. And the only way they can do it is to switch things up. Say, we're only willing to pay you for Maul if you promise to give us Benavidez for a certain amount after that and this stuff. And Canelo's looking at it like, look, I can leave and get all this accomplished on my own. I can tell Benavidez at a certain point, you want this fight, come over to the zone. And if Benavidez wants to clean things up, there's 2 things he needs to do. He needs to tell everybody in his camp to shut the hell up. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. And the second thing he needs to do is come out and say, I am willing to go to the zone to fight Canelo Alvarez. And why should he do that? Because it drops all the obstacles. And it gives Canelo no out, because people like me are not going to accept Berlanga when Benavidez is saying, I'm willing to come over to the zone right now to fight that fight. It's not going to happen. We're not going to excuse that behavior. And that's where Canelo needs to be careful, right? Is Canelo has built up this forgiveness, but what have we been saying? The media did not create Canelo. Canelo created Canelo. The only person who can detach himself from his base is Canelo. And the way he does that is he stops fighting the fights. So if we get Berlanga announcement May 4, if that's what we get, then no, that's where you start to test that, right? That's where you start to see where the Canelo floor is as far as numbers. How many people are actually going to buy that pay-per-view? Is it 350? Is it 400,000? And Canelo is going to start to see that I cannot continue to go in this direction if that's the move, because the market is going to rebel against me. This stuff is going to fix itself, fellas, over time. Where we need to be asking serious questions. And I'm glad Canelo did this, because now we have an opportunity to actually fix things. Now we have an opportunity to actually point the direction where it needs to, the blame in the direction where it needs to be pointed to. But we're not going to do that, unfortunately. As collectively, we're not going to do that, because once again, they've got us distracted on pitchfork guys versus the guys with the tiki torches. And they're going to pit you against each other. This guy's ducking that guy's ducking this guy, instead of focusing on how in the hell. Ask yourself these questions, fellas. Let's start from the bottom up. Morrell Jr. And shockingly, once again, this is the only channel where you're going to get this news and know that this even happened. And I dedicate 3 to 4 hours to this a week. You have dudes doing this full time who will not point this out. Shockingly. How in the hell is Morrell Jr. fighting the last 3 fights, and his fight isn't even on the PBC schedule till a week and a half out from the fight? The last fight he fought in December, it wasn't officially announced on Showtime till 8 days out. How is that possible? How are you correctly promoting a guy who is marketable, who wants to knock guys out? This guy has he's bilingual. He has the capability of becoming a star, Morrell Jr. He has everything. Everybody sees this guy is super talented. He has a high ceiling, yet they promote the fight for 8 days. You can see his fight on the schedule, Dan Rafael Substat, ESPN, but it's not on the PBC schedule till 8 days before the fight. And this has happened multiple times now. How is that happening? How are they not officially announcing that fight till 8 days before? How is Sebastian Fundora, fighting in Carson, California, in a venue in which was once popping, one of the best venues in boxing as far as people tell me, and they're not promoting the fight? And they're giving dudes out, like they're giving, like my guy Christian, they're giving him like 20, 30 tickets for the fight, giving them to him. Freebies. The place is not even half full. And this is Sebastian Fundora, one of the most exciting fighters in the sport. And he's from there. And nobody's buying tickets. But even deeper than that. And look, David Benavidez has himself to blame, lost the belt twice, all this stuff, right? But at least he learned from his lesson. Now he's getting some things going, right? But if Morrell Jr. and David Benavidez are not asking tough questions right now on the back end, and they may be, then they have no room. They have no room to complain. And why is that? Let's get deeper into this. How is it that fighters like the Charlos, Mal Charlo specifically, David Benavidez, Morrell Jr., guys like that, right? Excuse me. Caleb Plant. Caleb Plant was a victim of this because he almost lost his fight, or was almost a victim. He ended up making out well with it because that's, in this case, Canelo was a generous A-side. How is it that Caleb Plant can be, and I was saying it at the time, the fight was supposed to be in September. It ended up being what, November? And why was that? They almost lost the Canelo fight. Why? They started playing hardball. They said, we are not going to the zone to fight Canelo. So if you're Caleb Plant, if I'm Caleb Plant, I'm asking questions. Wait a second. I want to fight him. And why the hell do I care if it's on Showtime or DAZN? Why would I care about that? Why in the hell would I care? And the argument from the PBC stands and the PBC state-run media would be, and of course it's just a deflection, right? They're trying to fortify and they're trying to stop you from pointing at Al Heyman. But they should be asking these questions. If I'm Caleb Plant, why in the hell am I being used for platform protection at my detriment? I don't care. Do 8 to 10 million with pay-per-view upside, and I can go over to DAZN. Why do I care if it's on DAZN or Showtime? Why would I care about that? Furthermore, David Benavidez is used as a pawn because it's obvious. And the PBC, the Haymanites, the stands will say this isn't going on, but it was for years, and we pointed it out. None of these guys are fighting each other, and it's clear why. Al Haymon doesn't trust them to win these fights and look good, and he wants to keep them safe because he wants to, when Canelo becomes a free agent, stack the deck and say, I have all these fighters over here in and around 168 to throw out to you. And he's using them as pawns to get Canelo over, right? And I'm sure David's asking, well, I just want to fight Caleb Plant. I'll fight this guy, I'll fight that guy. Because I really do believe this is more than just clout chasing from David Benavidez specifically, him as an individual. His team, different, but him individually, I think he does want to fight the fights. I think he's cut from that cloth. But he's being used as a pawn to get Canelo over to the BBC. And then when Canelo comes over to the PBC and actually signs on the dotted line, David Benavidez isn't one of the fighters on the list for Canelo Alvarez? I hate to say do this thing like if I was in this guy's shoes, but once again, if I'm in Caleb Plant's shoes in that instance, why in the hell am I worried about DAZN or Showtime? I just want the fight. This is great for me. If I get Canelo Alvarez and I win the fight, even if I lose the fight, my stock goes up. People know me now. Because outside of Nashville, Tennessee, nobody knows Caleb Plant up until that point. So dude, you might be messing up my bag here by going into the weeds as far as what network. And he's clearly the A side. And we know that's how that works, right? Because once again, the constructs, the lingo, the language that Mayweather ushered in was A side, B side. That side the street, this side the street. Correct? And now all of a sudden with Canelo versus Caleb Plant, Canelo's as the A side, 95-5 A side. If we're being generous, has to go across the street to Showtime? And if I'm looking at this like Caleb Plant, I'm Caleb Plant, I'm like, why are you threatening to mess up my bag over a network beef? Let's go over there. I'm the B side. Let's go fight him over there. And the same thing with Benavidez here. Benavidez knows he's being used as a pawn to get Canelo over. And then once Canelo comes over and signs on the dotted line, Benavidez has to be asking. I would have to imagine he has to be asking quietly, secretly, why am I not on the contract? Why in the world is my name not on the contract with Canelo 3-fight deal? Why is that happening? And once again, the PBC stands will throw out, Canelo's scared of Benavidez, so, he wouldn't agree to that. Well, I don't know what to tell you. If I'm being used as a fighter for platform protection and to get Canelo over to our side, I want to at least know that for my work, for my cooperation, that I'm going to be rewarded once he actually comes over here. I'm going to make sure of that. But they don't. They don't, shockingly, which complicates the matter. This complicates the matter, and shockingly, he's not on the contract. Dudes are paying attention to that little highlight segment, but the pull quote is actually complicating the prospect of a September fight with Benavidez was that, according to one of the sources, he was surprisingly. Why are we complicating the situation? Why would we do something so shocking? Not one of the opponents specified in Alvarez's 3-fight PBC agreement. And that should be the story of the day. That pull quote right there. But instead, they're going to distract you with Canelo's ducking Benavidez, Benavidez ducking Morrell Jr., and they're going to run you in these circles. They're going to continue to shine the lasers at the wall and hope that you follow this laser like a cat, right? Like a distracted cat, because they don't want you pointing the finger at the dude that made this complicated and shockingly did not put Benavidez's name on the contract. In the state-run meet, just like the devil's always busy, right? The devil's always busy. So are power brokers. They're always busy. Sanctioning bodies, they're always busy. They're always busy distracting you. And for whatever reason, man, for this particular individual, Al Heyman, let's just call it out. We're going to catch all kind of flack for this, but it's fine. It's fine. I'm just a boxing fan, man. I don't care. I'm not trying to make a living networking with these dudes who, quite frankly, I don't even respect at this point because I've seen enough. And the past 24 hours has proved it. It's proven it. I'm tired of being humble about it. These dudes are not my peers. And I don't even get paid to do this. I just focus on this 3 to 4 hours a week. This is maddening how either incompetent or corrupt the whole thing is, from power brokers all the way down to writers. And they're not even able to focus and lock in on something that is so obvious and is being done right in their face. And I think the reason I have to assume they're complicit in it. I have to assume they're just going to continue to run interference for Al Heyman, and they continue to distract dudes because financially it benefits them too. All these dudes out there in their titles, Canelo ducking Benavidez, and we're going to have plenty of time to talk about that. And if Canelo doesn't fight Benavidez in the next year or so, he's going to have, I'm not going to be out here defending that dude. He's making 35 to 55 million per fight. He can do it himself. He's going to fight, especially if he's going to fight Berlanga. But that's not the conversation we need to be having right now. The conversation is, how do they use this dude? How do they get away with using Rolly Romero as platform protection and talking him out of a fight with Ryan Garcia? And poor Rolly, he's just a short bus dude. He's short bus shorty. He doesn't have two brain cells to rub together. The dude's DNA is messed up. It's clear. It's obvious. How do you talk him out of a fight with Ryan Garcia on a pay-per-view and get away with it? And you've got him fighting Isaac Cruz on a card nobody's going to watch, on the undercard, fighting a dude who's 4'11", walking around like he's a real-life pit bull. Did y'all see the poster of this card on March 30th? Isaac's poor face is a perfect circle. And that's who Raleigh's fighting instead of fighting Ryan Garcia on pay-per-view. Caleb Plant almost got his bag messed up because they got in the weeds about Showtime versus pay-per-view. Showtime versus the Zone. And now Benavidez allows himself to be used as platform protection in order to get Canelo over and stay safe at his own detriment. Because if he's active and he's fighting real fights, as Nando has pointed out in the chat, shout out to Nando, super chat $4.99, appreciate your support. As he's pointed out, Benavidez didn't need Canelo to become a star. Good Lord. He could have been fighting the fights. I watch Benavidez, man, it's such a waste. It's such a waste. I see this dude give interviews and I say, walking around with his beautiful wife, and I say, that dude should be a star. He's entertaining. He's fun. I love watching the dude fight. But for years, and some of it's his own doing, but he's starting to correct those actions. But he was fighting David Lemieux. That was his only fight that year. You need to understand, fellas, they're lying to you. David Benavidez was outsold in his hometown by Jaime Munguia. That cannot happen. The dude cannot be going to Vegas and see part of the arena curtained off. This dude is looking at the pay-per-view numbers and they're abysmal. And that shouldn't be the case. He should be a star with or without Canelo. And that's the point. Why are American stars not being developed? We've talked about how the process is broken. Look at Top Rank. They've got all kind of talent. All kind of talent. But do we trust that this talent, even with Top Rank, is going to be developed? They're falling short. They're failing us. We should have American stars, and particularly with the PBC, they stunt that growth. They do not allow their fighters to fight. They're not active. They have disparagement clauses, so they can't come out and talk bad about this and say they don't want it. And they're not fighting each other in a lot of cases. And for years, David Benavidez's growth was stunted, not only as a fighter, but as a star, a possible star, because he's being kept safe to get Canelo over here. And then once Canelo comes over here, they don't even put his name on the contract as a possible fight for Canelo. So now what do we have? We talked about how Benavidez and his team, this is all too complicated. Benavidez needs to tell his whole team to shut the hell up. Samson Lukawicz is out there with his 27 gold chains, selling people lemons, going to Spanish-speaking interviews, saying this, saying English interviews, saying this, going to anti-Canelo channel, saying this, going to pro-Canelo channel, saying something completely different. And then Jose's out there just looking like, I'm trying to be nice. Jose's out there doing what he's doing, and he doesn't look like the sharpest tool in the shed, right? And they're making things more complicated when they could have made this simple. So either one of two things is going on. Either they don't want the Canelo fight and they're using it for clout chase, which I don't believe. I don't believe that's the case. I think Benavidez will take any fight, or they're chronically mismanaging him. Somebody's lying in that camp. And David Benavidez needs to be asking his camp some tough questions. And he needs to look in the mirror and ask himself some tough questions. Am I going to continue to be used for certain people's gain that is not benefiting me specifically as an individual fighter? Do I have some people in my camp who have conflicts of interest? Do I have some people in my camp who are telling me things, hold on, we'll take care of you eventually, but then don't deliver? But they're clearly using me for something else that's going to benefit them on the front end, benefit them greatly, and then they're promising to deliver me something on the back end, but they don't even get that on contract, and they don't deliver. Do I have people in my camp who have conflicts of interest, who have something other than me that they're worried about, above me? If I sign and you're my advisor, you should be advising me to become a star. You should be advising me to where I'm such a star that people cannot avoid me. And they haven't been doing that. Why? And boxing writers are not out there asking these questions. Why was Caleb Plant used for platform protection? Why is Rolly Romero finding Isak Cruz, all 4'11" of them, with a collar around his neck like he's a real life pit bull? Why is Rolly fighting him on an undercard of a pay-per-view nobody's going to watch instead of Ryan Garcia on pay-per-view? And why is David Benavidez used as a pawn to get Canelo over to the PBC? And then once Canelo signs on the dotted line, Benavidez isn't even on the contract. How? So this is when David and David Morrell Jr. need to be asking themselves some tough questions. All right, wait a second. Wait. They need to be asking some tough, wait a second. Horrible contract on the outside. He screwed David, and boy, did he. Before I elaborate on that, I pray David learns, and appreciate the super chat. Appreciate the super chat from Luis Puente. I pray David learns that his dad and Al are stunning his career. He could be bigger on Matchroom or even Golden Boy. He's dangling David for clout. And dudes need to be asking themselves, they need to be looking around at the room. Remember when Will Smith, the final episode of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, he's just looking around. Everybody's gone. They're gone. He's just standing around. Look at that lonely schedule over there. Tim Tszyu, he's not contractually obligated to PBC. He can walk. Keith Thurman's old. Danny Garcia's old. These guys are has-beens. Errol Spence Jr., he's walking around like a real-life Cyclops, like a pirate. He's done. Anything he has left, his market value is destroyed after that fight. Bud's gone. Canelo's gone. Deontay Wilder's gone. And he's looking around. He's like, wait a second. And I'm sure PBC is going to tell him, you're going to be the face of Amazon Boxing, and they have 200 million subscribers. Who the hell is he going to fight? Are you to believe that he moved up to 175 to become a mandatory for Bivol versus Beterbiev? If so, good luck with that fight. Good luck. We'll see. And if he fights that fight, we'll give him full credit here. And I'll continue to support David Benavidez as a fighter because he's exciting and he's marketable. And this dude can become a star, but can. It should have been done by now. Tank should be way bigger than he is. It doesn't help that this dude is climbing onto a booster seat in a Ferrari and drunk driving and hitting a pregnant woman and running away. That's certainly not going to help. But inside the ring, the dude's entertaining. Inside the ring, the dude is knocking people out. He should be a star. And they're guiding this dude around. You cannot, fellas. Ryan is the exception to the rule. Jake Paul is the exception to the rule, and even that ran out. And Ryan Garcia, watch, it's going to run out as he continues to lose big fights, and he's going to have to grasp for straws. And he's talking about fighting this PBC guy. I mean, the UFC guy. It's going to run out. These guys are the exception to the rule. You need to go through the fire eventually to become a star. And the PBC is trying to eliminate that process in Floyd Mayweather's image, as Beeb correctly pointed out early in the show with this clip. Not pretty boy Floyd. We're talking about Money Mayweather on the back end. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work. The whole PBC, it's a scam. It cannot work by face value. It cannot work for many different reasons, but you can't be a promoter and a manager at the same time. Call yourself an advisor, not show your face, not do interviews, show a dude who's condescending, who literally looks like a weasel. As Conor McGregor pointed out, he had that guy pegged early, and have him as your press secretary when he was supposed to be the network exec. This cannot work. It cannot work. And I'm tired of being called the bad guy. And I'm sure the other channels who are calling this out are tired of being called the bad guy and doing the work of what legacy boxing media should be doing. Instead, they're going to try to distract you with this guy's ducking that guy, that guy's ducking that guy. Look, I don't want to hear about Benavidez ducking Morrell Jr. or any of that stuff. What I want to know is, I don't feel sorry for these dudes if they allowed this to happen, number one. You allowed yourself to be used as bait to get Canelo over and didn't make sure that your team put you on the contract to fight Canelo in one of these 3 fights? Are you serious? And further complicating this is you have your team out there, Samson Wicka with 27 gold chains, and your dad. And then you got the guys on the back end, right? The Cubises and the Al Heyman all the way up, right? But specifically those two guys are out here complaining about why you're not getting a Canelo fight. Aren't you part of his team? Aren't you part of Benavidez's team? So why did you not make sure that the advisor did not care enough about you and your fighter to actually put you on the contract to fight Canelo in one of these 3 fights? And now I'm supposed to feel sorry for you dudes gnashing your teeth and moaning and whining and crying. I can't get this fight. And Canelo's scared. Why didn't you corner him on paper? Ironclad. And I'm supposed to believe these dudes when they said 55 million, we offered this dude $1 gazillion. And I'm not saying that Canelo is not complicit in this. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this team is such a mess, and that whole camp is such a mess. And on top of that, the PBC is an utter disaster, and people aren't properly pointing it out. They're a cancer. They're more than just a net negative. They're a cancer to the sport. They're stunning the growth of fighters. They're not keeping fighters active, and they're not creating American stars. And it's why Japan is catching up with us. For the love of God, those dudes have 9 champions, and we have 12. That is not normal. I don't want to hear that the world is getting smaller and the world is catching up. You're allowing them to catch up. We should still be producing the best talent, and we are producing talent. The talent is there. Top Ranks roster shows that. They have a farm system, but something is broken from the prospect level up, and the face of that is Al Heyman. It's broken. It's broken. And I continue to lose my patience because these dudes aren't pointing a finger where it's supposed to be pointed. They're going to continue to demonize dudes and distract dudes, and you fight him. Canelo fans versus Benavidez fans, and Benavidez fans versus Morrell Jr. fans, and Rolly Romero fans versus Ryan Garcia fans. And I'm telling y'all, none of y'all should be fighting each other. The only people that I have to fight is the people who get in the way of me pointing a finger at Al Heyman. Why do you continue to run interference for this dude? He is clearly a cancer. And can somebody with a big space in the boxing media, you dudes who are out here and you have 500, 600 people watching your lives, for the love of God, can you please start asking these questions? We're big enough to get conversations started with the little bit of limited time we have, but you dudes can actually affect change. Do it. Stop being cowards. Do it. Real boxing publications, instead of pandering to this stuff and putting fighters like Errol Spence and Tank Davis into your pound for pound list, man, I'm sorry. I like some of these dudes. I like them a lot. And for the most part, these dudes are net positives. They're great. But you're allowing them to get away with this stuff. You're allowing it. You're enabling it. And you're not going hard enough on this stuff. I understand it's difficult. I have empathy, man. I do, because people, it's a tough economy. And if people ask tough questions, there are ramifications to that. And you have to worry about the boxing public being intelligent enough to understand it. I get all that. But this is Canelo. You got to give him, even if you're a Canelo hater, you got to give it to him. He's offered us, even if it's just him looking out for himself, which it is. But a byproduct of this move here is it gives us the opportunity to have a hard reset. This is Canelo pressing the reset button. And on top of that, it gives us the opportunity of having real conversations that we should have been having a long time ago, that some people like a Thomas Hauser tried to bring to our attention 8, 9, 10 years ago. But he was called racist and all kind of other stuff, right? Because he was going against Al Heyman. And that's part of the propaganda, right? That's part of the psyop, is anytime somebody points the finger at Al Heyman, the writers will come after you. His state-run media, they'll come after you. And then the state-run media has, these dudes, and some of them will do spaces with these dudes who are demonizing Jews, xenophobic, racist. Some of these writers are cuddling up with these dudes. And I'm supposed to sit here and take these people seriously. And it's easy for me, right? I'm just a boxing fan and these are not my peers, right? I'm not going to go out of my way to eat dinner with these dudes at fights. I don't have time for that. I'm going to be eating steak dinner with my guy, Only Sanch, Steve Kim, dudes like that. Hot Boxing Minute. I'm not trying to go out of my way to appease those dudes. And I'm not going to pander them. It's easy for me to do it because I'm just a boxing fan. I'm not going to act like I'm reinventing the wheel here. But we need people who can affect change to actually go out and try to do it. Part of your job as a journalist, the big part is you seek the truth. You seek the truth, and you don't get in the weeds with super micro stuff when there's a big macro issue here right in front of everybody's face. And you seek the truth and you go after it, no matter what the circumstances or ramifications of that are. Those are the best journalists. You have to do real investigative journalism, and you have people who are not asking the questions that need to be asked. And it's, why is Morrell Jr. advised by the same? He's advised by the same guy Benavidez is advised by. And Morrell Jr., not only is he not getting promoted, not only is he not putting his fight on the fight schedule till a week and a half out, and not doing any promotion for his fight and comping them to the gills, comping these people to the gills because they can't sell fights because it's a Cuban American fighting in Minnesota, for the love of God. Why is he being advised by the same guy as Benavidez and his advisor can't deliver that fight for him? Morrell Jr. needs to be asking these questions. Why would I stick around with a dude who, there's one fight I want? And it's mostly the reason I'm here under this tent. Because they're certainly not promoting me. They're certainly not delivering me big fights. And a lot of that has to do with Morrell Jr. Too much risk for reward, for the little reward. But once again, it all ties together. Part of that is the reason is he's not being promoted. He's not active enough. He's fighting in Minnesota as a Cuban American. Don't you see that? People will just throw out that he's too much of a risk for the little reward. But why is that? Why did Golovkin end up getting the fights? Why did Golovkin end up getting 3 fights with Canelo? And he leveraged that fame that he got from Canelo into a super fight with Murata in Japan. And he got fights like Danny Jacobs eventually. Why was that? Is Tom Loeffler was intelligent enough to know, I'm just going to keep this dude busy. Next man up. Next man up. And you can say what you want about Golovkin. I don't care. They did the right thing. They moved him the right way. We're just going to stay in people's faces. And that's what Glenn Jennings is doing with Tim Tszyu. Stay busy. Stay busy. We're not going to wait around for anybody. We're not waiting around for anybody. We're going to fight almost quarterly, 3 to 4 times per year until somebody has to see us. The demand is going to be there. And it helps if you're entertaining. Golovkin was knocking people out. Tim Tszyu wants to knock people out. That helps. And people who are not Kazakhstani, people who are not Australian will get in your corner because we just want to see, we're more than ever, we're just thirsty, hungry for fighters who just want to fight. And we're being demonized for this. We just want to see dudes who want to throw down. That's it. Be entertaining and fight. That's it. We're more thirsty for this than ever. And the fighters who do that, who keep themselves free enough to do that, and don't tie themselves to high minimum, because Jose will mess up and he'll say the quiet part out loud, right? He's just not the sharpest tool in the shed. And he said, throw out something about a $5 million minimum, right? If Benavidez has a $5 minimum per fight, good luck. Good luck. The managers are advising these guys into taking high minimums per fight. They're restricting them. They're getting them to sign deals with the PBC, disparagement clauses in them. These guys have no freedom. This market that Canelo just hit a reset button on, we got to give him credit for that. The fighters who are going to win in this market, fellas, are the ones who are free, the ones who are active, the ones who are entertaining. It's why DAZN was pushing this the other day. It's why, as D-Style pointed out, ESPN is pushing it. Entertainment, entertainment, entertainment. Those are the fighters who are going to win in this market. And the fighters who you see once per year, they're going to lose in this market. Why do these fighters feel like they're above fighting multiple times per year when Canelo is talking about he wants to fight 3 times this year? In a way, he wants to fight 3 times this year. Anthony Joshua fought 3 times last year. He wants to fight 3 times again this year. Tim Tszyu wants to fight 3 to 4 times per year this year. Navarrete fought 3 times last year. So why do these other, if Canelo, Inoue, and Anthony Joshua, the 3 biggest fighters in the sport universally, are not above fighting 3 times per year, they're trying to tell you through their actions, this is how you win. You stay in people's faces. And you're too big to follow that example. But furthermore, man, Benavidez, why are they not asking these questions? Why are they not asking about conflicts of interest? Why is Morrell Jr., and he may be, but let's just assume they're not. Why is Morrell Jr. not asking, wait a second, why am I not on your fight schedule? Wait a second. Why is this fight officially not announced till 8 days before the fight? Where's the promotion for my fight? And I'm specifically calling out a fighter that is under the same banner as me, that you can deliver to me, but instead he's going to fight Vodzik, who is an Eddie Reynoso fighter. Why? Why is this happening? Why is this happening to me? Benavidez, I'm clearly, if he's intelligent, which I think he is, and I think he does want to fight the fights, I'm going to give him credit, but give him the benefit of the doubt. He strikes me as a marketable dude, entertaining. You like what's going on with him, right? And he wants to fight the fight. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that this isn't just clout chasing, because when you start to see this stuff, it does scream clout chasing. Wait a second. You're not telling us that you're not part of this 3-fight deal. We're finding out today you're not part of this 3-fight deal. So why are you whining and moaning and gnashing your teeth? that Canelo will not fight you in September of last year, May of this year, September of this year. You weren't part of the plan. Is this being hidden from you? Do these dudes not talk to each other? Is that it? Does David, he has to talk to his dad. So is his dad not talking to Samson Luka Wicca Wickawicks? And is Samson Luka Wicca Wickawicks not talking to Al or the Cubas? I have to assume they're all talking to each other, right? But why does it seem like they're not on the same page? Why does it seem like they want people to believe that Canelo is supposed to fight Benavidez in September 2023, May 2024, September 2024, but he's not part of the deal? And every time when Canelo signs with Mel in September, they say he's ducking us. When Canelo was talking about fighting in May against Maul, he's ducking us. Wait a second. Did you not read the contract? You're not part of the deal. Complicated, right? So I think it comes a point when Benavidez has to say, I was under the same banner as Canelo. I'm being used as leverage to get him over there like a carrot, right? You want the Benavidez fight? Come over here. Come over here. Keeping these fighters safe. Come over here, Canelo. Come over. Look at the roster we got over here. Come over here. Leading the market to believe that Benavidez is part of a 3-fight deal with Canelo, because that's what everybody believed. And we find out he's not. So if you're Benavidez, if I'm Benavidez, I have to be asking questions. And that's what we said yesterday. Me and D-Style, we were talking about it. There are fighters on phones right now, currently, who are having tough conversations with their managers. And I'm pretty sure you have fighters out there putting out feelers and saying, with other companies, right? And saying the top ranks of the world, the matchrooms of the world, and they're having difficult conversations because they're going to possible free market. And they're seeing that they possibly have an out with PBC, right? Because things have obviously changed. And they're testing the market quietly and asking questions, and they're seeing that their value isn't what they thought it was. These promoters are not going to pay them anywhere close to the minimums that they got at PBC. And they're seeing that their market value has deteriorated, or it never was what they thought it was. And they're asking tough questions. Why is that? Well, you weren't active. You weren't fighting the fights. It's simple. And we've been telling you this. The boxing writers haven't been telling you this, but boxing fans have been telling you this. You want to gain our support. You just fight the fights and you fight often. Not in the contract. Remy, not in the contract. Not part of the 3-fight deal. If the reporting is correct. And I had a manager tell me this last year. He's not part of the 3-fight. I didn't believe it. I'm just giving PBC too much credit. They need to bounce, bro. Right now, we're going to find out who the fighters are who want the smoke. We're going to find out. We're going to find out. We're going to find out which fighters want their freedom and want the fights. We're going to find out here pretty soon that, look, corner Canelo. And I don't think they're going to do that because they could have cornered him, Benavidez's team. They could have made sure that if Canelo does sign over here, we need to make sure, we need to have this in writing, that we're one of the fights in this contract, one of the names, and they didn't. And Benavidez has to be saying, how? Unless he's in on it. I don't know. But if he's not, if he's just a good-natured dude who wants to fight the fights and he's being mismanaged, he has to be asking, how did you drop the ball here? How in the world did the PBC, once again, I gave him too much credit. 15 days ago, I'm sitting here and I'm saying, if the stuff I'm hearing is true, then good Lord. But there's no way the PBC can drop the ball on this. There's no way they can drop the Canelo bag, and they do it. And you get more details, and the details are being put out. Why? Because they want to distract you, right? Canelo's to blame. Benavidez won't fight Morrell Jr., all this stuff, right? They're trying to pit people against each other. And you should be losing trust as a person with foundation on anybody who's getting in the weeds about that stuff right now. You should lose trust in them because they're not focused on the ball. They're not reading the stitches on the fastball, and they're not starting conversations that need to be started right now that have been neglected. Why is it that that Morrell Jr. wants the Benavidez fight? They're under the same banner, and Benavidez is fighting Vodzik. Why is it that Benavidez is being used as leverage to get Canelo over to the PBC for a 3-fight deal, and he's not in the contract? How is this happening? And if you're Benavidez and Morrell Jr., you need to be you need to be talking to your lawyers right now. You need to, and if you don't have smart lawyers, you need to get some and say, wait a second. There is no way I'm ever going to become a star doing what we're doing right now. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I can't become a star here doing the same things I've been doing. I can't get the fights doing the same things I've been doing. I've been led astray. I'm baffled by it, dude. I cannot get over the fact that Benavidez and some other fighters were used as leverage to get Canelo over, and then Benavidez's team, guys like Samson and Jose, we wouldn't know why Al's not doing it, right? Because Al, like we talked about, manager over here, promoter over here, he's just worried about building up his platform, and he's going to get... Am I on mute? I don't think I'm on mute. Andre, I think maybe you're on mute. He's going to get Canelo over there by any means necessary. And he's going to say, David, don't worry about it. I'll take care of you on the back end. Don't worry about it. We'll get him. We'll get him for a 4th fight. We're going to take care of it. We're going to take care of it. Don't worry. We're going to run a smear campaign once we get him over here. Once we get him over here, we're going to run a smear campaign and try to force him into, even though we don't have you on the contract, to get him in the ring with you in May or September. It's going to happen. Right? And they don't deliver. And Canelo sees all this and he just leaves. He's like, why do I need you to fight Munguia? Why do I need you to fight Bud? He's free too. I'm gone. And if I want the Benavidez fight bad enough, I'll get it anyway, because this time I'm going to play hardball, and Benavidez is going to have to come over to the zone to fight me. He's going to have to say that. I'm not doing the Caleb Plant thing again. But they don't deliver. And I can see why Al would get Canelo over by any means necessary. And I'm not saying, once again, I'm not saying Canelo's free of any blame. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying this is so incompetent. So incompetent. It's so corrupt that a dude is using fighters as leverage for his platform against their betterment in order to get Canelo over, not delivering on his promises. Raleigh should tell you that. There is no way that any competent advisor would advise Raleigh against fighting Ryan Garcia on pay-per-view and go over there and fight Isaac Cruz on the undercard of a card nobody's going to watch. Isaac Cruz, all 4'11" of him, walking around like he's a real-life pit bull with a collar around his neck. Nobody's going to do that. And nobody's asking, why is he doing that? Except maybe Steve Kim has asked. Why would he do that? The PBC guys are all joking around about this, right? Oh, look, Ryan thought he got the fight. Ryan thought he got the fight. No, you don't got the fight. They're joking around about it, but it's a serious issue. You have a dude who is clearly not sharp and not smart being used against his betterment. He's being taken advantage of, and he's a fighter. He's the one getting punched in the face. He's the one putting his life on the line. As much as we dislike the dude and make fun of him, Riley Romero, he's being used, and that's not good as a fighter. For the betterment of a guy who doesn't even care enough about you to come out and do interviews, doesn't get punched in the face, and is using these fighters. And they're brainwashing you into thinking that this guy is for the betterment of fighters. Why? Because they get paid more money to fight lesser competition. And meanwhile, boxing fans are heading for the exits, some mass exodus here in America. And these fighters are not becoming stars. And it's worse for them long term because they're not getting fights and they're not active. They're not getting promotional deals. They're not turning active income into passive income because nobody cares about them in order for them to do that. You want to be able to make money like Canelo, Golovkin, Anthony Joshua without getting punched in the face. You want to be able to have a beer, a beverage, gas stations, clothing line, all kind of stuff without getting punched, money coming in without getting punched in the face. And these guys cannot do it because nobody cares about them. And nobody cares about them because they're being chronically mismanaged, misadvised, and mispromoted. And we say this stuff and something breaks like yesterday and you're going to say, oh, this is the coming to God moment for a lot of people. It's going to be the coming to Jesus moment for a lot of people, right? They're going to see it now. They're going to see it. And then the initial reaction is Canelo's ducking Benavidez. And then that sets off a whole Benavidez ducking Morrell Jr. And we got this infighting. And Al Haymon's just sitting back and saying, really? These people are this dumb to where I'm going to skate on this? He's got to be saying it. He's got to be with his burner accounts on Twitter. He's got to be seeing this stuff and saying, I cannot believe these dudes are going to give me a pass on this. You got the state-run media all busy this morning, right? Running propaganda, running interference for Al Haymon. And then you're going to have this whole mess. And you're going to have the dudes with 500, 600 people on their lives doing 5-hour lives. You're going to have callers calling in. One caller is going to be yelling about Canelo's ducking Benavidez. And Benavidez offered him. And Benavidez didn't offer the $555 million. And then you're going to have, well, Benavidez ducking Morrell Jr. Blah, 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 blah. You're going to have the short bus dudes, right, having their spasms, and they're going to be having their universal collective circle jerks and having conversations that, dude, you're missing the point. The point is there's a dude clearly, constantly, conflict of interest, constantly running this sport into the ground and doing it. And he's gaining financially from it. He has to be because he's still around. But at the same time, the market value of his fighters either go down or they don't reach the ceiling that they should. I can't get over it. You're used to get Canelo over. And then when Canelo comes over, you're not on the contract. Are you insane? And your team has the nerve? Your team has the nerve to complain that you're not the September fight 2023, May fight 2024, September fight 2024? Are you insane? You're not on the contract, bro. The time to do it was then to corner him. It was then. And your team dropped the ball, and you should be wondering why. Why did y'all drop the ball right here? I could have been had this fight. I could have been had it had I not lost the belt twice. That's on me, but this is on you. This is on you. I'm doing the work now. Why should I have to come out and say I'm willing to go over to the zone? Once again, why do I need you? I'd be looking for ways out of this contract right now. I'd be wondering why Samson is being passed around like a $5 hooker, channel after channel after channel after channel, selling his lemons, right, with his 27 gold chains. I'd be telling all these dudes, shut the hell up. Shut the hell up. You want me to sit over here and fight Vodzik in June? And if you put that fight on pay-per-view, it's going to do 8 buys. It's going to take me 2 minutes. 2 minutes to count up the money we make off that fight. I'd rather get free and be active. This is what I'd be saying. You didn't have me on the contract? And If Benavidez knew this, if he knew this, it's on him. You were stupid enough to let that happen. Not only did you drop the belt twice, and at that point, you've cornered Canelo, right? Because if Canelo comes up to 168 and fights for the other belts and then stops short of you, we know now. We know. There's no doubt about it. But you keep leaving doubt. I'm not saying Canelo is exempt from blame here. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is there are multiple times now where you had the opportunity to completely corner him. You dropped the ball twice, and now your team dropped the ball. You're being used as leverage to get him over here, and you're not on the contract? And I'm supposed to be empathetic and cry that you're not the September fight, May fight, September fight. I'm supposed to sit here and listen to these interviews about Canelo's ducking me, Canelo's ducking my fighter, and you're not on the contract. Are you insane? Who in the hell with critical thinking skills and two brain cells to rub together is going to feel sorry for that team? He needs to be telling Samson Luka, shut the hell up. He needs to be telling his dad, shut the hell up. We need a complete reset here. I need to step back. We need a complete reset. We need to have some conversation. We need everybody in the same room to figure this out. And I need to be talking to lawyers. I need to be talking to lawyers to see, should I skate right now? Because I think this is a conflict of interest. Why are you using me for leverage to get this guy over here? And then you don't even have the decency to put me in the contract. And if David knew that, good Lord, we're dealing with another Rolly Romero as far as intelligence, if that's the case. Morrell Jr., same thing. Morrell Jr., same thing. Why in the hell y'all not promoting me? Why do y'all continue to put me in Minnesota? I'm calling this guy out. And you said I was part of his 3-fight deal. That's what you said. And I was going to fight Vodzik? No. I'm under the same banner as this guy. I'm under the same banner as other guys in the weight class. And you're not delivering me any of those fights because you're saying I'm too high risk and low reward. It doesn't fly. You know how I get less high risk, low reward? You know how my reward goes up and my risk goes down is I actually fight other fighters, good fighters, other than this banner in the weight class that you have, that I have access to. And I look a little bit more vulnerable naturally because they're tougher fights. And people see me more. And people get behind me. And if I win in entertaining fashion, then there's more reward. If I look more vulnerable, there's less risk. And that's how the equation works. But they're not even giving him those fights. They're programming the market, us, the people, through the media, through their state-run media, to pass this off as Morrell Jr. is just too high risk, low reward. We can't do it. And Samson's out there saying, we're not going to fight Morrell Jr. until he gets a belt and we get a belt. Well, good luck with that. How the hell are you going to do that, especially when the sanctioning bodies aren't cooperating? And I'm sure that has something to do with you too, by the way, because you should be pressuring them to strip Canelo. This is constant either incompetence or corruption. It's probably a mixture of both. But if I'm Morrell Jr. sitting around, I'm saying, why can't I get this fight? If I'm not getting Benavidez, I should at least get this guy. If I'm not getting that guy, I should at least get that guy. None of those guys are busy anyway. Nobody's doing anything. There's no fight schedule. Why am I not getting these fights? I don't want to hear I'm too high risk, low reward because I have access to all these fights. If the advisor just plays ball and delivers me this fights. And if he can't, I got to bounce. A lot of these guys are able to lawyer up right now from what I'm hearing and have some uncomfortable conversations about, hey, can I bounce off this contract? Can I leave? Things have changed, right? That's what I'm hearing from the PBC. Canelo heard from the PBC. Things have changed. We can't do that anymore. Canelo said, peace out. Gone. And this has been going on for a while, fellas. We should have known this when Steven Espinoza did that interview that he did when Showtime was doing their last event, and he started to throw up mandatories and people started, Munguia. Wait a second, why would Munguia be in the equation? We should have known then. These conversations have been going on for a while. So maybe fighters don't want to lawyer up and get ugly with stuff, but I'm telling you, man, nothing's going to happen over there. Morrell Jr. is going to be one of these guys 5 years from now that people are going to be like with Peter Quillen, right? Remember that guy at 168 that people wanted to fight David Benavidez and oh yeah, David Morrell Jr. That's right. Peter Quillen's out there somewhere with a trucking company, and good for him, right? He made some money, but he's forgettable. And all these fighters who have talent and marketability, because Morrell Jr. is one of those guys. He's one of the few Cuban fighters who gets it, wants to knock people out, speaks both languages, can connect with the American market, is entertaining, super talented, and they're wasting it away. And he should be asking tough questions. And the media, when it comes to them, they need to stop feeling sorry for themselves. When I dropped my tweet yesterday saying Rick Glazer is outperforming these guys, he dropped the two biggest stories in recent history. They're throwing all kind of excuses, and some of them, like, it's true. He has access to execs that are going to give him information that are not going to give the writers information. But you know what the writers should be doing? And this is what old school writers would have done. The ones that aren't lazy, the ones that aren't going to wait for just a PR press release to drop in their lap and dress it up like it's a real article and put it out, right? The real journalists would be trying to get to know Rick Glazer personally. Saying, Rick, cool, like butter him up. He strikes me as the type of dude who wants to be buttered up, right? So get to know him. Have lunch with him, dinner with him. Treat him to lunch, dinner, get to know the dude. Even if you don't like him, pretend like you do and start to try to get some stories from him. I mean, these dudes are making excuses. Writers should be getting these stories. I don't want to hear the excuses. I don't want to hear it. And look, man, we're going to have time to have these conversations is what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is these are the talking points they want out there. I'm not going to do what they want me to do. I know enough to know that. Just like with the government, I'm not, I know what they want me to do. I know they want me mad at these people over here. They want these people. They want the black people mad at the white people, the brown people mad at the yellow people, and all this stuff, right? No, I'm telling you, stop getting distracted and focus the blame and your ire at where it belongs. That's what they want you to do, that stuff. They want you saying David's ducking Canelo. No, Canelo's ducking David. And these dudes, I'm telling you, these content creators, low-hanging fruit type dudes, these are the conversations they're going to be having at our detriment as boxing fans. Benavidez ducking Morrell Jr. No. Benavidez shouldn't even have to fight Morrell Jr. Why you want Benavidez to fight Morrell Jr.? You know, are you scared of him as a Canelo fan? These are the conversations they want you having right now. And Hal Heyman has to be with his 27,000 burner accounts and his unpaid interns on Twitter. He has to be observing this and saying they're doing exactly what I want them to do right now. And I'm going to be absolved of any blame. Is going to be blamed on Canelo or God only knows who when I drop the ball here. And I'm clearly in conflict of interest territory. And I have been for 9-10 years. And nobody seems to be pointing it out. I'm using my fighters to build my platforms at their detriment. It's clear. It's clear here. How is Benavidez used as bait to get Canelo over, and he's not rewarded by being put on the contract? This is insane. And look, this is a fair point to throw out there. We'll have those conversations, right? It could be David is complicit in this. It could be. If David knew his name is not on the contract for 3 fights, and he's out there saying in September of last year, Canelo's ducking me. May of this year, Canelo's ducking me. September of this year, Canelo's ducking me. Nobody's going to feel sorry for you for not getting that fight. You continue to hijack your own career. You did it twice by losing the belts. You could have cornered Canelo then by simply keeping the belts. And if Canelo doesn't come up to 168, we know why. At that point, if Canelo collects the other belts and stops short of fighting you, we know why. But it's constantly ambiguous. Why? Because you're hijacking your own career at that point. You're clearly at that point being used, and you know you're being used as bait to get Canelo over, and that your name is not even on the contract to fight Canelo. And if you know that, you know you're being used. And you're complicit in this smear campaign against Canelo at that point, saying he's ducking you. And I'm not absolving Canelo of wrongdoing here. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just saying this team is a mess, whether Benavidez knows it or not. And if Benavidez doesn't know it, he needs to skate. Morrell Jr. definitely needs to skate if he's able to. He needs to go. You need to go somewhere where people give a damn about you. You don't need to be anywhere near dudes who are going to stick you in Minnesota and cop the gills out of the place. And not start promoting your fight until the week before the fight. Actually, they don't promote it at all. They just pop you on the schedule and put out a quick copy and paste announcement. And that's it. That's your promotion. It's brutal, man. It's brutal. And from top to bottom, I want you to pay attention to this. It's going to take a smaller channel to ask this question. And they're going to be shamed into doing it by guys like D-Style Boxing. Watch them. They're not going to ask David Benavidez if he's willing to go to the zone to fight Canelo. They're not going to ask Boots Ennis if he's willing to go up to 154 to fight Bud Crawford. They're not going to ask these questions. They are so either corrupt or incompetent, collectively. Either way, it shouldn't be for me to figure that out. And it shouldn't be for me to even start these conversations, but you have a growing number of channels who have to start, just boxing fans who have to start channels because we feel like we're being led astray and not properly represented by the boxing media. We already know the power brokers are against us. We already know that. And that was always the case, but we used to get a certain percent. We're not expecting these dudes to deliver every fight. We're not expecting Bob to hit a home run every fight, Al to hit a home run every fight, Eddie to hit a home run every fight, Turkey Al-Sheikh to hit a home run every fight. We're not expecting these fighters to fight killers every fight. Except now we have to, because these fighters are fighting once per year. And Eddie's out there saying that about Bud yesterday. This guy needs to fight more. It's clear. He needs to fight more. He's arguably the best fighter in our generation. Why is he fighting once per year? But if these fighters are behaving the way and staying active, we don't expect them to hit a home run every time. Every single fighter can be nitpicked the way Canelo is right now when it comes to Benavidez. And I don't feel bad for Canelo because he'll have 35 to 55 million per fight to wipe away his tears, right? If that's the case, if he's upset about that. Every single fighter, every single legend in the sport, you can say, he avoided this guy at that time. He avoided that guy at that time. He avoided that guy at that time. We don't expect these guys to hit a home run every time, but we used to get a higher percentage of the fights we want than we are now. Now it's at an all-time low. And it's frustrating when we see the media so detached, and there's never been a bigger detachment from power brokers and fans, right? Because we're getting a smaller percentage. But now there's this detachment from journalists and fans to where now, and journalists get upset when fans create channels and do interviews, but they have themselves to blame. They've been letting us down for so long that so many of us feel like, we're doing an interview tonight. So many of us feel like you're not giving us the interviews we want. And then when you do, you're letting us down, not asking real questions, not attacking real issues in the past 24 hours proves that. Canelo hits the reset button. I'm sure it was for his betterment, right? But he still does us a favor by hitting the reset button, in effect. And the market and the journalists push this on him. But the market, his initial reaction is this guy's ducking that guy's ducking this guy. And once again, they don't get it. And we're missing out on another great opportunity for great conversation and change. And it's unfortunate. I'll see y'all tomorrow, man. God bless. Peace.